Please stand for the posting of the colors and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please welcome Mr. Jones for the singing of the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? You may be seated. Now I'd like to welcome up Tom Kane to give a speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. This weekend, we will all celebrate Memorial Day, a day for remembrance, a day to think about the sacrifice that the men and women of our military have made generation after generation to keep our country safe. For many people in this room, this assembly is nothing new. We've been in some auditorium on this Friday, year after year, since elementary school. This assembly has, in many ways, become routine. It is easy to think to yourself, haven't I heard this all before, and tune out for the rest of the afternoon. But today I challenge you to think. Think about the countless ways your lives have been made easier by the sacrifices made by those in our military. Take a moment to appreciate that every day we are afforded the privilege of not having to worry about our immediate safety. We can sleep well knowing that our country is protected by people willing to give their lives for our national security. It is far too easy to forget that this lifestyle we are able to live in this country is a privilege. Millions, if not billions of people live in regions where their lives are threatened every day from a multitude of sources. Each and every one of us is lucky to be able to call America our home, to live in a place where we have confidence that we are protected from military threats. This privilege is supplied by those who wake up every day, ready to risk their lives for our country. Before I finish, I want to ask of you one more thing. Today, when the roll is called of those from our communities who lost their lives at war, listen to each name, and remember that each name has a story. At some point in each of those stories, That person made the decision to give up their life of safety and security to give us ours. As we participate in solemn remembrance, we should all be overcome with gratitude for the sacrifices these people have made. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce American Legion Senior Vice Commander Bill Martin.
What I'd like to do first is ask you all please to stand for a moment of silence, so if you can stand up. All right, what we're doing is this. There have been many young men and women just like you that have put on a uniform and gone into a combat zone and have not come back. Their memory is what we honor this weekend. So please, if you can bow your heads for a moment, just for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. If you can be seated. All right, I wish to first of all say thank you to Superintendent Harvey and for all of you for being here. This is a very important thing that is done here. I hope the tradition continues because it's a good thing. So thank you. Since all of you were toddlers, you have been taught to distinguish right from wrong. Not a day has gone by in your young life where there was not a lesson learned. At first, those lessons may have come from your mom, your dad, or a caretaker. Later, those lessons came from a brother or sister, a friend, perhaps a teacher or a religious leader. In the very near future, those lessons about right and wrong are going to come from your college professors, your employers, perhaps community activist or a leader, and others that you encounter as you go through this life. Doing the right thing, however, does not change as we get older. It's the same. The basic morals that you learned as a toddler still apply. Simply put, you're not supposed to lie, cheat, steal, be wasteful, or harm others. Our laws are designed and enforced and upheld based upon morality grounds. What we all learned as children still apply, no matter our age. What we know, we all know when we've been wronged. We all know when we have wronged another. No fancy amount of rationalization or tortured logic can make it otherwise. Many will try to persuade you otherwise. I have earned my living in the United States military and the civilian world for over 3 decades as a person arguing and deciding legal matters, which I hope lie upon moral grounds. In my military and civilian professions, I sought justice. But what is justice, and what does it really mean? Is justice the same for each one of you? If your skin color or sexual orientation, citizenship, or ethnicity is different than that human being that is sitting right next to you, would you both have the same definition of justice? Should you? Or maybe, how could you possibly? The American system of government, in its concept, is close to being perfect. I hope you all believe that. I certainly do. Implementation is another story. The flaws in the system are primarily in its operation, not in its conception. The 3 branches of our government, judicial, legislative, and executive, each struggle for equality and sometimes supremacy. It makes our system dynamic, sometimes contentious, ever-changing, and evolving. Never should we allow one branch of our government to dominate the other for any lengthy period of time. Built into the American system is the concept that people are moral beings, but with flaws. The still all-important voter and citizen is imbued with the power to modify and constrain and chastise a wayward branch of government with the temporary aid of one or two of the other two opportunistic but still steady branch brethren. This is how it should be. Morality, the ability to decipher right from wrong and then choose right, is part of the American character. It's part of what we celebrate. And it is something of which we are so proud, and about which we argue every single day in the media, in the courtrooms, in your classrooms, in the legislative halls, and in the streets. The men and women with me up on this stage helped define that American character through decades of service, selfless service to your country, to my country, while they were in uniform. While the engaged and moral citizen is the lifeblood that flows through the arteries of this great country, the military is the muscle that is used for defensive purposes. Those defensive purposes may, on occasion, appear offensive in various positive and negative iterations of that word. But fundamentally, we act defensively. These men and women, these veterans that I am proud to be with here, in their time, stood up for you, stood up for me, and stood up for each other, at a time when few others could do that or would do that. Now, it is a perplexing thing when you stand up and step forward for your country, when you are so young and you really don't know what you do. You don't know what you're stepping into. You don't know what's going to happen to you, but you step up and step forward anyway. You experience a loss of control. You want to embrace more tightly what you had, your family, and what you are risking. You do take pride in being one of those few that stands up and steps forward, but it's still scary and it's confusing. Without these young men and women who of their own volition step up and go forward into the unknown, this country could not survive. I am in awe that we produce outstanding men and women from all backgrounds that join our military. Volunteers, every one of them. Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle once famously said, "There is nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer." There are some of you out there today, in this audience, who may decide to join our ranks, and you are most welcome. And if you do, that does not mean that you blindly endorse, back, support everything our elected leaders say. That is not the case. It's more complicated than that, and it should be. We are a nation of individuals who each possesses an independent motivation for action, but when we coalesce and work together, our American system of government, we are insurmountable. The key is working together. That means compromise. It means communicating with each other. It means empathy. It means respect, even for a position that you disagree with. And it means having a commitment and a deep-seated belief and faith that what we do in this country is right. This country produces men and women who join the military and serve their country with distinction. Our system of government permits such talented young men and women, such as yourselves, to rise and flourish in our military. We do inculcate our young men and women with the notion that this country is good, and what we do most of the time is good. You could not do that in a free, open, educated, and skeptical society such as ours if it were not true. I believe that we produce men and women because deep down the vast majority of us are moral, decent human beings who know right from wrong and have the courage to stand up and say what is right and what is wrong. That is moral courage. That is precious. That is part of the American character, and into your young hands, it is entrusted for not just safekeeping, but evolution. Memorial Day gives us a chance to reflect upon the human sacrifice in lives that comes with that safekeeping and evolution. Young men and women have gone into harm's way, and if they are lucky enough to come back, they come back different. We remember and honor two distinct things this weekend. One, the actual flesh and blood human beings who gave all for pieces of themselves for their country. And two, we remember the spirit, and we think of the spirit that dwells inside each American's heart, that enables each one of you to do great and selfless things if you dare. You have before you, to my left, a collection of individuals who are themselves pieces of American living history. Flesh and blood, soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guard, and Air Force personnel. They have represented and embodied the American character and spirit through their selfless service, and I am very proud to stand with them and introduce you to them. I'd ask that as I read their name that they would please stand. First of all, our commander, Greg McKenna, United States Army, 30 years of service, Special Forces, Green Beret, 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. Billy Martin, United States Coast Guard, 5 years of service. He's also my son. He's a pilot, having received his wings recently, and he's an alumni of this very school, not too many years ago. Bill Cole, son of a Legionnaire in our rifle squad. Gordon Lamson, United States Navy, 66 to 67, deployed to Vietnam. He was in the Da Nang area and was building runways for our aircraft during that war. Leland McDonough, United States Marine Corps, a 21-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, also a Vietnam veteran. In Vietnam from 1966 to 1967, flew 1,000 combat hours, 800 combat missions in a helicopter. Won the DFC, that is the Distinguished Flying Cross. It is one of the highest military honors that our country can bestow upon a military member. We also have some members of the Women's Auxiliary. Hayes DeMule, a past vice president of the auxiliary. Her father was a Marine. Carol Matthews, president of the Women's Auxiliary. Husband was an Army veteran. And then my wife, Jackie Martin, in the back of the room, auxiliary member, whose father was also a veteran, as well as several brothers. Cheryl McKenna, in the back of the room as well, who is a Women's Auxiliary member and the wife of our commander. We have Karen Tyler up front here in the United States Army, 2001-2003. And she was in during the global war on terror, and she is a veterans agent serving our service members who come back from a war zone and need assistance, and also those of us that retired. Tony Dignan, United States Air Force, 1968 to 1972, a past commander of the Legion, was deployed overseas. I have Paul Sedgwick, United States Coast Guard. Paul served for 20 years in the Coast Guard and was on a cutter breaking ice in the Great Lakes and places even worse than that, which included Antarctica and the Arctic Circle. These are not the only people in this room, I suspect, that have also served. Some of your teachers here are also veterans. Now, Catherine Frost, I think she's a middle school teacher, but she was in the Army for 8 years. Mr. Chris Shaler, I didn't see him earlier, but is Mr. Shaler here? All right. Mr. Shaler, United States Coast Guard, 6 years. Your Eric Fecky, your band director here, Eric Fecky, 21 years in the United States Air Force, and you see he's got some ribbons up there on the side of his chest, which are very important. He's very proud of them. We should be. Steve Douglas, United States Marine Corps. Is Mr. Douglas here? Alex Pittman, United States Navy. Did I miss any veterans that are here in our audience? If I did, please step forward and just state your name. Okay, thank you. I'd like to also just take a brief moment. There's an organization called Boys State and Girls State. It's a very important organization. In fact, my son went to Boys State many, many years ago. If there's any members that are in Boys State or Girls State, could they just please stand for a moment? Recognized? Anybody? Boys State, Girls State? Okay. Very good. All right, thank you. Now, this is my favorite part, and those of you that have been around for a while know what's about to happen here. I'm going to have you stand up in a moment if the answer to any of these questions is yes. So, does anybody out there have a brother who has served in the military or is serving in the military? Please stand up. Does anybody have a sister in the military? Please stand. How about a mother, either in or retired? How about a father who was in the service? How about a grandmother? How about a grandfather? How about a son, a daughter, an uncle, an aunt, a cousin, a good friend? Everybody, please stand up. Stretch your legs. All right. So take a look around at each other. Look at each other for a moment. That's very important. You have a connection with each other that should never be forgotten. You should be proud of that veteran that maybe has the same blood that you have. You should be proud of that friend in the time that you spent together with that veteran friend. They are yours. And I hope you keep them in your heart forever. They are part of this great country, whether they are living or deceased. So are you. You belong to this country belongs to you. And what makes and helps that connection be strong is the fact that you're standing up right now, and you've got a veteran that means something to you. Thank you. You may be seated. This weekend, if you get an opportunity, please talk to that veteran friend or relative if they are alive. And if they are not, please remember them. Please remember them, because that's what this is about. They served in the greatest military that has ever been on the face of this earth. It's something to be proud of. This is your country. It's probably the only country that you're ever going to have. So take care of it. Treat it right. Protect it. Never lose pride in it. It's your responsibility which course this country takes. Your participation counts. It's very important that you're involved because you are what makes this country strong. Finally, and most importantly, please remember that there were young, moral men and women just like you who put on their country's uniform, said goodbye to mom and dad, went somewhere terrible, did heroic things, and never came back alive. We, the living, are the beneficiaries of their sacrifice, and it is only befitting and proper that we never, ever forget them. It is the least we can do. Lives remembered are never lost. Thank you. If you want to talk with us afterwards, we'll be out in the hallway if that's permitted, okay? Thank you.
Please stand for the reading of the honor roll and remain standing for taps.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Dignan, 1967 graduate of this fine establishment. Except back then, they used to put us down in the gym on those nasty bleachers. But anyway, it falls on me to read the honor roll. Well, if I can say a quote from General Patton, very touching one. It's not for us to mourn the loss of these men. It's for us to thank God that they lived. So, town of Hamilton. First war that we know of in the town of Hamilton, it was then the Hamlet parish of Ipswich, was the King Philip's War. Well, Philip wasn't a king, he was a Native American chieftain who did some bad things, so they went to war against him. That was in 1675. A father-son team put down their farm equipment and went and fought in that war. And we believe they both survived. And we had the French and Indian Wars, which was in the mid-1700s. George Washington was first officer duty in that war. But 3 members from Hamilton were killed in that. Antipas Dodge, John Jones, and Joseph Simons. In the Revolution, 14 served. The youngest being 13 years old. He played the fife in a band. War of 1812, we had 3 served. None killed. Civil War, 113 served, plus 3 in the Navy. And the following were killed in action. Elam W. Burnham, James A. Chase, George W. Dodge, Isaac K. Dodge, Thomas Jefferson Dodge, William Ham Dodge, Austin Kinsman, Alva Tibbetts, John Woodridge. 6 served in the Spanish-American War, survived. World War I, 117 served. The following did not survive. William J. Collins, Augustus Peabody Gardner, our post is named after. Lester B. Hodgson, Samuel P. Mandel, whose statue stands in front of the community house. His parents built that building and gave it to the town of Hamilton Wenham. And Reginald W. Young, World War II, 242 served. These are not impressive numbers today, but back in those days, there wasn't 8,000 people living in Hamilton. It was a much smaller town. Those who were killed in action: Charles W. Appleton, Charles S. Burrell, Donald Donaldson, Hiram T. Folsom, John R. Grant, Bernard P. Greeley, Robert D. Hiller, George Varnell Meyer, Jr., Sidney B. Meyer, John L. Smith, Albert H. Ozer, and George S. Patton. In Korea, John A. Stalin, Robert S. Morrow. In Vietnam, Robert Crosby, and Robert Gates. We've had many people serve since then. Luckily, they have all come home. Honor roll from Wenham. Don't have numbers on this side of the page, but we'll find those next time. World War I, Frank Nelson, Lieutenant Norman Prince, who died with the Lafayette Escadrille prior to America entering World War I. William J. Taylor, World War II, Stuart Edward Barton, Carl Duncan Campbell, Benjamin Edwards Cole III, Pierre Bobet Erard, James Bartholomew Ginty, Paul Lewis Sawyer, Walter Allen Sears, William Arthur Trout Jr. For Korea, Joseph Frederick Krehor, and Vietnam, Alan B. Cheeseman. Thank you.
I just wanted to say also thank you to State Representative Brad Hill. He's a big supporter of veterans and our organization. Thank you, Brad.
Please remain standing for the retiring of the colors. That concludes today's ceremony. Please exit the auditorium in respectful silence.